Welcome to exercise 14. You've made it successfully to your solo flight. So if you're watching this, I take it your next flight in the actual aircraft would be a full solo flight. So well done for getting this far. So for today, I just want to go over a few scenarios that you might face as a student pilot doing your first solo flight, just so you can actually just be a little bit more comfortable when you are flying, not stressing too much. Some of these scenarios is not actually supposed to be given to you by ATC or by the controller, but it's always just good to prep, as sometimes they do require you to do some of these maneuvers just to assist with the flow of traffic. So let's get into it, and there we go. Okay, so first things first, once you've taxied on the runway, we are going to do our lineup checks as we saw yesterday in our training. So wind, we're going to confirm where the wind is coming from, so you'll look at where your windsock is, and then always just say the wind's coming from the north towards the east, so from left to right. Then we're going to keep controls into the wind, but today wind is calm. I'm just going to go and hide that control column for you so you can actually see the gauges. Transponder goes to altitude mode, altitude is set, then DI to compass, so DI to compass is at line, and confirm our landing and taxi lights are on. So now we're taking off runway 07 at Lanseria in South Africa, and remember we're trying to fly a perfectly good rectangle for our circuit pattern. So how it works is, depending if the air traffic controller is going to tell you to either do a left turnout or a right turnout. In this case it would be a right turnout. We're then going to be doing a right hand circuit. So all that we do, we just add 90 degrees to see what we need to steer for our crosswind, downwind, base and final approach phases. With that being said, let's get started. So brakes off. Okay, line ourselves up. Just gonna move the control column so you see. Then we gently apply power 1, 2, 3, whilst applying a bit of right rudder to keep center line. Airspeed's alive, oil and temperature pressure is in the green, and then we've got more than 2,300 RPM. Now we're just waiting for 65 knots to rotate. 60 knots, 65, rotate gently, pull back on the control column, just put the dashboard on the horizon and let her climb out. Typically in your single engine piston aircraft, it is high altitudes. We'll be climbing away at 75 knots. So yeah, the simulated differs a little bit. Also, when we were ground level, we were 4,500 feet, and circuit altitude at a manned aerodrome is always 1,000 feet above, so we need to climb 5,500 feet. We're coming out 4,800, or at 300 feet off the takeoff checks that we are going to do. So it's just brakes, undercarriage, mixture, throttle, fuel, flaps is away, fuels on both, and they're not landing, and taxi light goes off. Only once we've passed 500 feet and we are clear of the hangars, then we can execute our turn towards the right. Remember, if we're still climbing, we keep it to a 15-degree turn. Now we're gonna turn onto the crosswind and fly on a 160-degree heading. Okay, so we keep climbing. Okay, we've reached our altitude, but in this scenario I still would like to keep it at 15 degrees because we're still building up speed. So now we can level off. There's 160, leveling off, and we reduce the power for cruise 2,300 and trim the aircraft as always. Okay, let's get a better view for you. There we go. Okay, then we wait for our 45-degree angle with the runway, which we are at. Looking left over the dashboard, clear right, 30-degree turn, and we are now turning onto the downwind, which is 250, or the reciprocate heading of runway 07. Okay, so now I want to show you one of the scenarios that might actually happen. You are on a downwind, and let me just get yourself in the white arc. You've then gone ahead and done all the downwind checks as seen in the previous exercise. So let's just wait for the white arc. Okay, then we apply 10 degrees of flaps while pushing down a little bit on the control column to keep the nose flying straight level, and we got it perfect. We're trying to keep about 75 knots. Now the controller should not ask you to orbit, but sometimes they've got no other choice where something has maybe happened and they now request you to orbit. So you were busy now talking to the radio and heard you need to orbit. And so orbit is, they'll tell you either just as you're flying to the left or to the right, and it's a 15-degree turn. But whilst that was happening, your speed tend to then decrease a little bit, and you then immediately start your 15-degree turn or rate 1 turn to commence the orbit. Now, so as you can see, you are already low on airspeed. And what I want you to do before you ever enter that orbit, first add power to ensure you are above 70 knots. And the exercise here is to keep at 15-degree turn or your rate 1. So this is just to give them time to do what they need to do. While doing this, there is going to be other traffic that will also be orbiting, so you are looking outside, inside. We're looking inside. What's our airspeed? Is it above 70 AFM? So we keep turning. We're looking for outside orbit view, and the turn, is it 15 degrees? Now we're past a little bit, so now we correct to 15 degrees back. Looking at our turn slip indicator, there's the runway. Still we're above 70 knots. So now we're just going to re-establish and then let them know at this point. So do not rush an orbit and always keep above 70 knots. If the controller asks you to slow to safe minimum speed, if you just remember, they should not ask you that as a student pilot, but if the controller forgets for some reason, if it's slow minimum speed, you slow down to the safest possible speed, which in this case for single engine aircraft is about 70 knots. If they ask you again then to slow down more, then you simply say you cannot comply, because you need to keep the aircraft in the air. So you keep flying your aircraft more than 70 knots and never below 70 knots. So now we're just going to fly our normal downwind at 75 knots. We are going to wait now for our base turn, and then just before we're looking, we saw actually, okay, there's our 45-degree angle. We're getting ready to turn, and the second scenario, ATC comes up and tells us please extend the downwind for some kind of reason. Maybe there's something on the runway, somebody lost the fuel cap, so we can't actually land now. So all that you do is you now keep flying straight. You get yourself a reference point. So there in the far distance we see something like a small hill, and we are flying 250 at about 80 knots. So that's what we want, and we are flying more or less our circuit altitude. And at the same time we are confirming that we are flying parallel with the runway, because we don't want to be actually drifting to the right and then flying onto oncoming traffic. Eventually ATC will then get back to you telling you you can now turn base. So we can confirm we are turning base. We can do a 30-degree turn onto a heading of 340. And just remember to do your lookouts. I'm not going to do every lookout now in the simulator, as I'm trying to focus on different things, but always before you turn it has to be a lookout. So now we are a bit far from the runway, so we're not going to descend immediately. So you can keep a little bit, or if you can start descending, if you got a carpet will go on. You'll reduce the power to about 1800 RPM, and you'll lower second stage of flap and add a bit of front pressure on your control column, and then we're looking for about 70 knots. Once we are satisfied, we'll turn 15 degrees for our runway, and we'll just now wait for the runway to get into view, and we'll now gently descend as we a little bit farther from the runway as expected. Okay, so like I said, always just keep it calm, don't stress, and fly it nicely. There's our poppy lights, 2 red lights, 2 white lights. We want a glide slope 70 knots on our airspeed indicator. Now I'm just going to take away the flight yoke from here. Wings level, we're going full flaps, we want 70 knots, and the aircraft that has landed in front of us has just landed, but it seems like it's struggling to actually vacate the runway. So it almost appears like there is a bit of a problem. So we'll call this scenario 3, or yeah, we'll keep, anything can happen on your final approach if there's still an aircraft on a runway. So now you are getting ready for your landing, and from here you start trimming out, getting your carpet in the cold position or off, and suddenly year ATC says go around. So without any hesitation, what you do, you first go power, full power, 1, 2, 3. For go around power, raise the nose 4 fingers attitude for go around attitude. Now we wait for our speed to increase, and at that same time you retract the flaps in stages. There's 1 to 20 and the next one to 10 degrees. Now you leave it at 10 degrees and you start climbing away at 75 knots until you have actually climbed back to 300 feet above ground level for your after takeoff checks, or in this case 4,800 feet that we do. And then from here you'll then go flaps up and confirm everything else is off and secured as it needs to be in your after takeoff checks. So that is then how a go around procedure is done, but you're just going to do it a bit much quicker in that part. Perfect. So we'll keep climbing, and then the last one I'll show you what's happening if we are actually ballooning an aircraft. So ballooning, that just means we are touching the runway, and because the angle of attack of the aerofoil changes, it produces more lift, and at the current airspeed that you're at, it basically produces enough lift to actually lift your aircraft off from the ground again. So a lot of students in that case actually try and land the aircraft back, and then finding themselves in a situation they do not want to be, or flaring too high above the runway, causing a stall or wing drop, which results in an aircraft being damaged quite severely. So I'll just show you how to manage a ballooning situation. Okay, we're still climbing to 5,500 feet. Okay, start turning now onto the downwind. always just keep a visual reference outside for other aircraft, looking inside, outside. Okay, there's our assigned altitude, 5,500 feet, flying more or less parallel to the runway, and we'll start with our downwind checks shortly now. Okay, so we'll just come back on the power a bit. Okay, then our downwind checks, brakes, undercarriage, mixture, propeller pitch, not applicable for us for today. Fuel is on both, we've got sufficient quantities. And then we're going into instruments. All instruments is serviceable. Flaps, we are waiting for the airspeed indicator needle to show in the white arc for our flap safe speed. We are within the white arc. Now we blowing one notch of flaps for 10 degrees, and there we go. Now we just maintain about 75 knots to 80. Perfect. And then last, electrics. So just confirm all circuit breakers is in, landing lights and taxi light goes on. And last one, safety, just to make sure seat belts is secured and no loose articles is actually rolling around in the aircraft itself. Okay, they were about 45 degrees. I'm gonna start turning in just so I don't keep you guys too long. Okay, our 30-degree turn onto heading 340. Leveling out, carpet goes hot, reducing to 1,800 RPM, applying another notch of flaps at 20 degrees, and now lowering the nose of the aircraft, flying about 70 to 75 knots. Personally, I prefer on the base to fly at 75 knots. Okay, we're gonna keep this to a 20-degree flap setting for this landing. Okay, now we're turning to 15 degrees, and now I'm going to demonstrate for you the ballooning of the aircraft, or bounce, but in correct terms it's referred to as ballooning. So we need to be about 65 knots overhead the threshold. So let's say you've come in a little bit too high for the approach. So now you will lower your nose, but by lowering the aircraft's nose, your speed will tend to increase. So on the airspeed indicator, you can see we're actually now doing 75 knots, about 10 knots over our planned approach speed. So I'm just going to keep a little bit of power to keep her going. So now, as you've been told, you reduce the power, raise your nose, but look, you're still too fast. Then you basically touch and you bounce the aircraft. From here, you need to go full power and keep your wings straight and level. If there's sufficient runway, then you can gently reduce the power and then just bring yourself back for the landing. Wait for the flare, hold until she touches down, and bring the aircraft to a complete stop. With international runways like Lanseria or Cape Town or King Shaka, you can maybe attempt to land the aircraft back if you've got like a 3 kilometer runway. But if you are doing flight training at a small airport that is not of international standard, then always never attempt to land the aircraft once you've ballooned. Once you've ballooned, you add full power, you keep the nose of the aircraft straight and level until you reach 75 knots, and you climb away to fly another circuit and come and do a safe and successful landing. there is no rule for you to say you must land. So always remember, there's always the opportunity to do a proper go around. There we go, and that's it for this lesson. Thank you very much. All the best for your solo flight, and I'll see you for the next exercise soon. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so you may be notified as soon as the next live stream or video becomes available. Have a lucky day.